and welcome to the regularly scheduled Arts, Parks, and LA River Committee. This meeting is now underway, and I'd like to welcome my colleagues Bob Blumenfield and David Rue. We will be joined shortly by our Vice Chair, Curran Price, and Paul Kretz is not able to make it today, but we have quorum, and we will move forward. But colleagues, what I'd like to do, if there are no public comment cards at this time, take items 4 through 6 on consent if there are no objections. Items 4 through 6. Seeing as there are no objections, that shall be the order. And in terms of item number 2, Ms. Gurley Collado is not able to be here, and there is a deadline. I'd like to just waive that on consent as well. That's item 2. And that's the appointment for the El Pueblo Commission of Gurley Collado. Which brings us to item number 1. Mr. Blaine Seton-Willis, if you'll please read item 1.
Good morning. Item number 1, a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Scott Crawford to the El Pueblo de Los Angeles Historical Monument Authority for the term ending June 30, 2018.
And I'd like to welcome Scott Crawford up to the table. Scott is a constituent in the Great 13th District and a member of the Silver Lake community and has volunteered through the years to do many, many great things on behalf of Silver Lake and in the district. So, Scott, welcome.
Thanks.
And please give us a little bit of information on what you'd like to do on the El Pueblo Commission.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled. This is an honor. Blah, blah, blah. You've heard that before. A little bit about me. In the turn of the century, I was honored to be president of the Friends of Hollyhock House. And for the next 7 years, I was president, and I helped raise $17 million for the preservation. And I worked really hard at making that happen. And it happened, and it continues to happen. Thank you very much. Residence A is going to look great. In terms of me and architectural preservation and museums, that's a large part of my background. I've worked with the Hammer Museum. I've worked with the Contemporary Art Museum downtown, and Hollyhock House. I was awarded the AIA from the American Institute of Architects, the presidential honor for my work at Hollyhock House. I was also chair of the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy Conference in 2005. We raised more money with that conference than any other conference that's ever happened. And we also started something called ArchiFest, which was an architectural festival of Los Angeles. Chicago has one. It brings in about 60,000 visitors a year. We don't have it anymore because Daddy was really tired. So, I don't know. Last year I was honored to be the Citizen of the Year by the Lions Club. The year before, President Barack Obama named me to be on the Selective Service Board. My honors go on and on and on, and I think it's boring, but if you want to hear more garbage, I could go on.
It's not garbage. Congratulations on all those honors. But I know you to just be very active in Silver Lake and even in a variety of ways, even the Neighborhood Council, for example. So my question would be, what do you see as some of the challenges facing El Pueblo Cultural Monument? And what would you like to do on the board? How would you like to influence the forward momentum on the commission?
I'm a single guy. I have nothing at home. I'm elderly, and I need to be kept active. I'm the overachiever that you hated in grammar school. This is right up my alley. I've been there. I've made a couple visits since this happened, and there's a lot of work to be done. It's wonderful where it is, but we can go farther with it. And if you travel there at noon, it's incredibly busy. but after 3 o'clock, it's a ghost town. And I think we need to do something about that, to bring more people downtown, to let them see how great Olivera Street is.
I'd like to welcome our colleague Corinne Price. And Mr. Crawford, just one more question. You've probably heard, it's been quiet of late about the uncertainty of some of the concessionaires at El Pueblo, and I think that continues to be ironed out. But that has been a serious matter that flares up every couple of years because it's such a tangled up mess in terms of who has the lease agreements and who doesn't. And I think that's something that you'll probably be facing as well, but just kind of a heads up for that. Again, it's something that just flares up every now and again. I sense that they're making progress on that, but it's just something to be aware of. And you're right, it's such a popular destination internationally, but there's certainly a lot more we could do in the late afternoon and evening hours to keep things going there and enliven the atmosphere more than just during the daytime lunch hour. So very good. Colleagues, questions, comments about the appointment of Mr. Crawford? Well, I think this is a slam dunk for this committee, and we look forward to approving your nomination to the commission in full council. Is it tomorrow or Wednesday that we're doing this?
Next week, sir.
Next week, okay, after Thanksgiving. All right. That's it.
Okay.
You passed
Thanks, Scott.
unanimously here.
Thank you for your
Thanks, Scott. And that brings us to the Human Relations Commission appointment of Ms. Angelica Solis Montero. Item number 3.
Item number 3, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Angelica Solis Montero to the Human Relations Commission for the term ending June 30, 2018.
Hello, good morning,
Hello,
everyone.
good morning.
Council members, thank you very much for offering me the opportunity to come and speak with you all. I'm extremely humbled and honored to have been appointed to the commission and to hopefully seek your approval.
Wonderful. So I know Angelica through her great work at YPI and collaborative efforts with my office on a variety of matters, just since I've been in office, and it's always been terrific. So I personally think you're a terrific appointment and addition to the Human Relations Commission
Thank you.
at a time when we really are doing some exciting things there. You've heard about Embrace LA, you know about Indigenous Peoples Day,
Yes.
the efforts there. And so tell me some of your thoughts, not, opinions on one way or another, but how your experience with YPI and your life experience, quite frankly, will inform you in moving forward issues that are important to Human Relations Commission and all the work we're doing and endeavor to do in this current environment.
Sure. Well, thank you. I think, first of all, I've been a resident of the city of Los Angeles for many, many years now, having grown up just outside of the city and attended LAUSD schools. And I've worked my entire professional career in the city of Los Angeles with really great organizations in the nonprofit sector that have done a variety of things. And I've also been very fortunate to work in communities in Boyle Heights and currently East Hollywood and Pacoima, where there have been a lot of efforts to really try to bring together communities with local governments to talk about really important issues, issues that make the city so great in its diversity. Currently in my role, I'm the Chief Community Development Officer for the Youth Policy Institute and have had the great fortune of being able to lead several programs, including all of our public safety initiatives. And those have really opened up the opportunity for me and my team to have not just great programming at local schools and at our community centers, but also have had the opportunity to begin to discuss and to plan events and efforts where we bring together community members to speak with the local police department, divisions, and we've had also to speak with all other law enforcement individuals to really talk about the issues that are important to communities, but also the efforts that are taking place across the city to improve on those relations and to improve on the work that LAPD and the city attorney's office and the city and others are doing already in conjunction with the city. I think, as you mentioned, it's a really important time to continue to have these important dialogues and to create a really safe space for these things to take place. I'm really excited about the Embrace LA initiative and the things that the Human Relations Commission has been doing as of late. I'm very eager to roll up my sleeves and to continue to contribute to the work of the commission. Just a lot of gratitude, again, to be able to bring to light something that has been a personal passion and that in my professional career I've been very fortunate to have a small part in helping support. So, yeah.
Terrific. I think your work and your experience, your background, they're going to help with Embrace LA. There's also countering violent extremism. There is sort of growing the awareness that Los Angeles is a city of religious pluralism, and how that really, I think it expands and influences way beyond just the city of Los Angeles. We're looked to as an example. And so that's a lot of the exciting work taking place on the Human Relations Commission. And I, for one, look very forward to working with you as part of that commission.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Colleagues, questions? Mr. Rue.
I just want to comment, and my office has had the fortunate opportunity to work with you as well at YPI and with the Children's Savings Account, and I think you're a great addition to the commission. I look forward to working with you.
Mr. Price.
Yeah, excellent background. Obviously, you are committed. I think you do a spectacular job on this commission. Talk a little bit more, though, about some of the public safety initiatives you say that you were involved in, and give us some examples of what we think successes were.
Sure. So in the past year, for example, I should set it up by saying that for the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, we have been working very closely, specifically with the Foothill Division and the Hollywood Police Division, to address public safety concerns. So we did a great deal of a community analysis. So we did some focused groups, community surveys, had a lot of conversations with the senior lead officers in both divisions and other community members, and came up with sort of some key issues that were really pressing to the community. This took place over the course of about close to a year, and since probably about January of 2015, we then began to work on implementing programs that were a direct response to some of those issues. So, for example, one of those is we have a youth mediation program at select schools. And we invite the city attorney's office and LAPD to be a part of those mediations that take place. It's peer-to-peer mediation program between youth. So that's one example. We have a safe passage program also in Hollywood at LeConte Middle School, where we again invite LAPD, school police, not just to help us set up the Safe Passage program where community members come out and volunteer to keep the streets, to be vigilant about what's happening in the streets in terms of public safety, but then we also invite community members, mostly parents, from the school and other local schools to come out and hear directly. So they've heard from the city attorney's office, LAPD, school police, LA Department of Transportation, and they get an opportunity to hear from parents about the public safety concerns, and then they also get an opportunity, the parents do, to hear from these agencies about resources and things that can be done. One of the things that we did in Pacoima last year, there were a series of shootings close to the San Fernando Gardens public housing. And so immediately the local senior lead officer reached out to us and asked if we can co-host a town hall. And so we invited other community-based organizations, and we invited the school leaders of all of the local schools in the area, did extensive outreach in partnership with LAPD to hold a town hall to speak with residents about their fears and their concerns, talked very tangibly about things that could be done, generated some excitement for a safe passage program to be established at the local school. So that's just one example of a town hall event where we had dialogue, and then a couple of examples of some of the programs that resulted as
All focusing on community and participation, community involvement. So,
right.
look forward to it.
Terrific. Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? I think we're good. So I think this committee unanimously... Oh, Bob, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, I mean,
No?
everyone mentioned, I'll just add my
All right.
voice. I appreciate the great work you've done with YPI and having worked with you on a few things over the years, and so I'm just pleased that you're going to take this job, and I know you'll be a great addition.
Thank you.
So I'm going to vote aye.
Are you going to vote aye? Just to make sure it's clear. So this committee unanimously supports Angelica Solis Montero for appointment to the Human Relations Commission, and that'll come next week as well? Full council? Terrific.
Great.
Congratulations, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
You too. All right, that is going to bring us to item 7, but at this point, we will close general public comment, and we will go into item number 7.
Item number 7, Bureau of Engineering report relative to the North Atwater non-motorized multimodal
Shirley.
bridge project
1 second.
over the Los Angeles River. This item is also referred to Public Works Game Reduction Committee.
Thank you. We're going to hear comments on this item first. 1 minute each. We have someone whose name begins with H-E-R and then another one that I can't even read. But anyway, 2 comment cards, 1 minute each. Come on up and give your comments.
Wow, the bitch can't read my name, huh? Bitch can't read my name. Unbelievable.
I think you need to stick to the topic.
That is a topic. Bitch,
Item
bitch,
7.
bitch. I came
Item
here to
7.
bitch regarding the report for the North Atwater multimedia bridge project, whatever the hell that means. This morning on the news, there was a family of 4 in that river. What are you doing under HHH? What are you doing with any of those measures that passed to enforce the engineers to help keep people safe from falling into that Atwater river dot? The problem is you don't have enough bridges. And if you would build bridges for homeless people to sleep under and live in, then there would be a better project that everyone win. The same way Trump wins. So without that, Mr. O'Farrell, yes, I'm here to bitch.
And the next one?
Yes, I just want to give a shout out today to Councilman Kerkorian who will not be here. Okay, so now we get to this thing, these non-car bridges. As Councilman Blumenfield knows, the San Fernando Valley Council of Governments met just on Thursday, talking about Measure M, Measure HH, and all these other measures. I do not see that this fits in with the current voter mandate. We need to build more roads. We need to build more access to reduce traffic congestion. This is not reducing traffic congestion. This is increasing traffic congestion, you crazy freaking people. So please defer to the San Fernando Valley Council of Governments who wants to put more of the access and move the traffic, not reduce speed of traffic. PDQ,
You're
thank
done.
you.
You're done. Bye. All right, this brings us to,
wait.
we have Shirley presenting on behalf of Bureau of Engineering. Shirley
Yes.
Lau.
Good morning, Shirley
Welcome.
Lau with the Bureau of Engineering, Bridge Improvement Division. I'll provide you with a brief report on the bids received for the North Atwater non-motorized multimodal bridge. Just to provide a bit of background, River LA a nonprofit organization who has been responsible for the design, estimate, specifications, and permits of this proposed bridge, which is the cable stayed steel bridge frame with a modified fan design. This particular design was advertised for invitation for bids on September 14, 2016 by the Board of Public Works, and bids were received on October 19, 2016. There were 5 bids received, ranging in cost between $12.5 million to $20.1 million.
How much was the other one?
There were 5 bids total, so
12.5 to,
between 12.5, I could go through each one if you would like. The lowest bidder was 12.54, roughly, million. The next one was 12.55 million. The third one was 12.9 million. The fourth one was 13.2 million. And the final one was 20.1 million.
okay.
So we received 5 bids, and the lowest bid received is at 12.5 million, which is 3.2 million higher than the original construction cost estimate provided by River LA. That was 9.3 million. So with that 3.2 million is roughly 34.91% higher than the original construction cost estimate. As such, the Bureau of Engineering, we estimated the total shortfall to complete this project. And I'll run over the 4 items that I included in the total estimated shortfall. So it would be the 3.2 million of construction contract shortfall, assuming that the lowest bidder is the lowest responsible bidder. We also included a construction contingency of 15% of the construction contract, and that totals 1.8 million. We've also included construction management, inspection, design support, and also permit fees, and that totals 1.9 million. And maintenance of this cable stay bridge for 10 years, which equals $900,000. So those 4 items, the total estimated shortfall is 7.8 million. At this time, BOE, River LA, with support by the Mayor's Office, are actively seeking various funding sources for that estimated shortfall. BOE will report back to this committee in early 2017 of available funding sources. So that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And you have
Good
some-
morning, council members. Jennifer Sampson, River LA. I just want to underscore what Shirley said, that River LA, through its board and staff, are continuing to work to find private sources of funding. We see our role as remaining partners in this, especially when it comes to the funding shortfall. River LA doesn't actually have any source of funding for the staff time to do this, but we are committed to the project. So we are continuing to work with the City of LA.
Thank you. Thank you. So, so the shortfall, for the lowest bid, which is 12.54, the shortfall includes construction, contingency, management, inspection, maintenance, et cetera, and then the maintenance of the cables, right? And that totals 7.8?
Correct.
So for the suspension cable bridge as designed, with the monies we have on hand, including the ATP funds and the MECLA commitment and the charitable giving, we have a shortfall of 7.8.
That's correct.
So a couple of questions. Did we get the extension for the ATP funds that were awarded for $3.6 million?
Yes, we did. So at this time, the extension is for 1 year. We need to award the project by September of 2017 in order to use those funds.
And those funds still keep us, with that in the pot, we're still 7.8 short, according
Correct.
to the lowest
That includes
bid.
the ATP funding. The ATP funding is included in the available sources.
In the
at this
available
time.
sources, okay. So a question that I have, is there any reason not to proceed with the simpler, scaled-down, no cable stay design?
As I understand it, with an alternative design, the private donor who has roughly 3.8 million as part of our available funds will not continue to fund that should we do an alternative design. So we
it's
will
either-
still be short.
Got it, of the money.
Funds.
So it's either the 220-foot tower suspension in North Atwater Village connecting Atwater Village to Griffith Park, the big fancy bridge. It's either that or he doesn't give any money for a downscaled version of the bridge. Is that right?
That's how I understand it, yes.
Even though we'd still build a bridge, it just wouldn't be the one that has the cable stay.
Right.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the downscaled estimates?
Right, so the downscaled estimates in my last report back in September, we had we spoke to 3 different vendors, and average costs from these vendors of prefabricated bridges, it ranged between $8.2 million to $10.8 million based on the type of prefabricated bridge we selected. So there's various, I guess, materials that could be used. So the cost depended on the materials. So we would try to retain some of the design from the River LA design for the abutment and the pier in the middle of the river.
So all of the structural pieces that have already been designed, you could still utilize that.
Right, and we intended to redesign basically the deck, the
And redesign the
superstructure
deck.
portion, and use a prefabricated bridge. And so with that, the estimate was roughly 8.2 to 10.8 million.
And of those estimates, would those include construction, contingency, management, maintenance, and inspection?
Yes, those did include it.
So you could get a total cost of a bridge that the community has been working and lobbying for years and years and years to get horses safely across the river, minus the cable suspension, for anywhere between 8.2 and 10.8. The downside is that if we go that route, we don't have the donation from Mort Lacretz. So, but we could move forward, but have, what would the shortage be without the charitable donation if we went with a less fancy design? What's my math there? It would be 3.6 plus Mikla, so roughly 4.6. So we would still be about, a little over $3 million short. So we'd have to independently find $3 million to build a downscaled design.
Right, so there will still be funds. And so this was just our estimate from the vendors. I just wanted to note that it was not advertised. So we would have to go through redesign and then re-advertise the project, and so there's some costs associated with that. And depending on what comes in at the time of the bids, then we will actually know the shortfall. So in recent months, I guess the bridge projects, they've been coming in roughly 30% higher, and so we hope that I'm hoping that the 8.2 to 10.8 is pretty accurate, but I just wanted to just let you know, council member, that has been, recent months, that has been coming in a little higher.
Well, I'm glad you did. So if we were to move forward in that direction, and you mentioned that there have to be some redesign and some advertising, would that put us in jeopardy with the ATP extension for the fall of next year?
Right, so that is a very, very aggressive schedule, seeing that.
Cut it close.
Right, so it would cut it very, very close, because the advertising would really have to start in April 2017 in order to make the September deadline to award.
What would be the chance of getting the ATP extension that we've gotten once extended again if we did a different bridge? The headquarters, Caltrans headquarters ATP group, they haven't had a second extension on any project to date, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. It's just very, very rare. And it was actually very rare for us to get a one-year extension on an award of a contract. Typically, they don't like to give such a lengthy extension on award of a contract. And let's go back even further. So a design was done for this 220-foot tall center, island suspension bridge across the LA River for equestrian crossings, multimodal as well, footpath. Could it be argued that if a completely simpler approach was done in the first place, we wouldn't have this minimum of 8.2 to 10.8 for a simple bridge to get us across the river? In other words, is not the design itself part of the huge cost, and is that entirely necessary to do a simpler bridge?
I guess for the simpler bridge, so the construction in the river has been very challenging in recent years, partially due to restrictions imposed by all the regulatory agencies. So I think a lot of that cost will remain the same whether, whatever type of design it is on the top of the bridge.
Got it. So whether we start from scratch or not, the engineering that's been done is going to be pretty much germane to whatever kind of bridge goes there. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yeah, a lot of the whatever goes in the river, the piers and the abutments, just construction of that portion of inside the LA River has just been very costly. Maintaining compliance with all our regulatory agencies' permits has been difficult.
Okay. And so at the last, thank you for that. At the last committee hearing where we heard this item, there were, members of the equestrian community that cautioned us very, very strongly against a suspension cable bridge anyway, because of the danger that posed to horses, since the center of gravity is pretty high, that their goal was never to have an elaborate, some would say over-the-top design for North Atwater Village for a bridge across the river. And now we're looking at an escalation. When I first took office, it was believed that it was going to cost somewhere around $5 or $6 million, and then it went up to about $8 million, and I was asked to help fundraise for the escalating price. Now we're talking 12.54 plus another, $5 or $6 million. So we have this escalating cost for a bridge that is beautiful in design, but one could argue is totally inappropriate for the location at the same time, that the equestrians raised in the committee and since, to me, that that's not the bridge that they ever wanted in the first place. So I think that brings some concerns, very, very clear concerns that I have and I've expressed for a while. And so I'm glad to know what we're working with and the timelines that we're working against. We're in a bit of a pickle because I don't think anyone wants to look for another, $7.8 million for a bridge that could arguably not even be so welcome in the neighborhood. A bridge that amazing might be more appropriate, in the center of the city, where that type of design could be admired and looked to. But this is a low-scale residential area connecting to a park. So I'm not so optimistic about the future of the suspension bridge. So I just want to put that out there. But at this time, colleagues, if you have any questions or concerns, I have some ideas that I'm going to suggest. But let's hear comments, concerns. Mr. Rue, since this connects the 13th with the 4th, you probably have some questions.
Thank you for the thorough presentation, and thank you for the comprehensive questions, Chairman O'Farrell. Just going back, the $7.8 million shortfall, I too have these concerns. But even before these new RFP proposal returns, wasn't there a shortfall on the initial $9 million?
So in the very first report, we estimated, so the River LA estimate of the construction cost is $9.3 million, and at that time we had available funding of $9.2 million. And so, yes, all the funds for basically the soft costs were not available at that time. That was a shortfall. You're correct.
So there was a shortfall,
Yes.
right? I don't have the report from the last meeting, but it was about like a $3 million or something like that shortfall.
Right, correct.
So $3 million for the original 9.3 estimate, so,
So that was for basically if you look at this report, the construction management, inspection, design support, permit fees, and then maintenance. So that totaled up.
Oh.
So that was the shortfall.
oh, okay, all right, so
So-
you're including that shortfall in here. So this is, so the shortfall is 7.8, it's
It
not
includes
10.8.
that, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's still a pretty large shortfall. So, I mean, I want to hear the chairman's, I know he has a lot of recommendations. So, but going forward, so we talked about delays. So is there a delay now, or can you talk about that again?
I think should we do an alternative design? The goal was to advertise the project for the alternative design in April so that we can award the project in September to use the ATP funds. I think the delay would be there if we had to redesign it starting, early January or January, February, then that's really aggressive. And depending on the type of alternative design also. So in my last report here in September, I think we were hoping that a decision to an alternative design would be made a little earlier. But I think at this point, we're still looking for funds for the already advertised project, and so that'll push us into early next year.
Okay. So I want to know exactly, I want to be clear on what our options are. So we're going forward with the original design, with the $7.8 million shortfall, and you guys, the department is trying to, along with LA River and everybody else, we're trying to find funding for it. But in the meantime, what the Chairman O'Farrell was talking about possibly at the same time following a different track with a more simpler design, will that create it? Is that possible, or will that create any delays, or?
If we were to start the design now, then that would give us more time than to start early next year, if that's a decision, or if that's a recommendation.
I mean, so would that create any extra delays? Would that create? I mean, obviously we're doing that for cost savings, but would that create extra costs? What's the potential pitfalls?
Yes, the redesign will have extra costs. How much? It would just depend on how much redesign needs to be done from what we already have. And so we haven't really looked into the details of that, but if we started it now, then we would have costs associated with redesign.
And of course, as the chairman referred to, if we did do a redesign, we could potentially lose the LaCretz funding from the family, right?
Yes.
Do we know have we reached out to them at all, or where are they now?
Yes, we have reached out to them, and if it is an alternative design, they are not going to provide the additional funds.
But if we keep it the current design, even with if unforeseen potential delays, they'll still fund it.
With that,
Chalmers, do you want the deputy mayor to come up and ask?
Yeah, but here's the deal. Come on up, Barbara. Here's the deal. If we move forward with the suspension bridge, including the LaCretz donation, we're at 7.8 shortfall, 7.8 million shortfall. That's including LaCretz donation. So if we move forward with that North Atwater Bridge, the suspension bridge, that, as I said, arguably my constituents don't even like, because they don't think it's appropriate for the site nor for equestrians, we still have a $7.8 million shortfall. If we move forward with a modified design where we use the engineering that has been paid for so far, and we lost the LaCretz donation, we would be at a $3.5 million shortfall. That's my rough math based on this conversation and the figures. So that's where we are. And so, Barbara, would you like to add to that?
Thank you. Yes, I spoke to the LaCretz family when the bids came out, and I spoke to them again this morning, understanding potential alternatives to how we proceed forward. And they basically said that unless we go with this design, they're not supportive. So of the almost the $5 million that they donated, we've already spent $1 million of it.
River LA spent $1 million on the design.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the choice of the city council.
So, but I just want to remind everybody that this was a bridge that's been in the books since 1998. It is the city of LA, it was included in the city's master plan, it was Project 147. So when we got the donation in 2011, when they received the donation on behalf of the city, in 5 years we had a permitted project. So so the council member is correct that we do have a funding gap, but in 18 months, we could potentially, if we do identify the funding, we can have a groundbreaking this coming year, January, February. And it would be an 18-month construction. So part of the things that we're looking at is ensuring that we not only funding the funding gap, but also the time delays. Because what the BOE indicated is the 8.2 to 10.2 does not, we don't have money for redesign. So that would identify, so now we would need new money. So potentially, a lot of the costs that River LA included, they didn't include that the BOE usually considers 15% of contingency costs. So a lot of the overruns are the city's soft cost commitments. So those would also be additional. So not only would we have additional delays, we would have additional design costs. So can we potentially be at 5.2, 7.2? So we're just committed right now at this point to work with the family's donation, because at this point, a 14.4 bridge project, we have $9 million in other people's money. So we've only at this point committed $1 million in city funds. So typically that's under, what is that, our percent, it is a very small percentage of a commitment at this point from the city. So the $9 million we're talking about are not even city funds. So when we're talking about...
We don't have the $9 million, because we have the shortfall of the basic...
No, funds available to the city are 9.2. Yeah.
Didn't we have a short... I don't know. You had a great budget. You had a great breakdown last time. I thought there was a gap for the 9.2.
No, we have 9.2 available to the city today. So the construction gap is 5.2, and as she described, is 5.2 in construction, plus the 2.6 of contingency, plus the, and construction management. But we have 9.2 now.
But the construction management and construction contingency was part of the shortfall from the 9.2.
No.
So in my first report, as part of my first report, we have 9.2 in available funds. And so the construction cost estimate was 9.3 million. And then we also had the shortfall in the soft cost. So that was the roughly 3-some million.
Right, so
the shortfall was all the soft costs.
Okay.
It's all the soft costs. Construction costs, we have 9.2 available to the city today. So I'm asking you guys to consider allowing us to proceed forward, because we do have 9.2 available today. And city funds at this point committed are only the 1 million that the mayor's office put in the MICLA funds that you guys adopted in last year's budget.
Councilman O'Farrell's calculation of if we went a different version of only having a $3.5 million shortfall, is that including La Cret's pulling out? Because if La Cret's pulled out, would that be, they put in $5 million, right?
That's without the La Cret's money.
Okay.
That's without the La Cret's money.
The 3.5 is that would be if we receive the ATP funds, that we got the extension. That would include the ATP funds and the 1 million MICLA. We'd be 3.5 minus the La Cret's donation.
Yeah. And I do remember the last time when this came before our council, there was a lot of concerns from the community, especially the equestrian community. So I'm just worried how come they weren't, consulted before. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing the recommendations that the chairman has, because I feel conflicted both ways, and I want to get more information, because I thought we were going to have not just a return on the proposal bids, but I thought we were going to have more of a concrete estimate on exactly what funding we have, what we don't. I wish I had a copy of the last report, but so what is staff recommendation to go forward?
Staff recommendation is that we will come back in early 2017 to provide you with the funding sources.
So we're
that
not making
we
any
have
decisions
available.
today?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I follow up on a question?
Yeah,
Ru asked?
please.
Ru asked a question. I didn't hear the answer to it, which was, and maybe mischaracterizing, but it was, can we move simultaneously with both? Can we look at the redesign, starting that now, so we don't end up, losing out down the road on timing, and at the same time move forward on the other project? Are they mutually exclusive to do both? Obviously, you can't build both, but I meant.
I think from our perspective is the LaCretz money is not available to use it for redesign, and the Caltrans money is not available for redesign. So we would have to identify new funding for the redesign, so we could go simultaneously.
How much is that redesign? I'm sorry, Bob.
Well, you would have to have BOE actually do an RFP to hire sub-consultants to get a bid to do redesign. So it's going to be a couple months before we actually get costs.
All right, we will submit a task order solicitation to our consultants and then request for proposal.
But that's a process that can run on a separate track.
Exactly.
And Ms. Romero, tell me the gap in the current, I'm hearing different numbers, and you were doing a great job of trying to sort those numbers out, and I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. The 7.8 million gap in the one and 3.6 million gap in the other. But then you're saying we have 9.2 million.
I think the clarification.
The gap as you define it.
The gap as I see it is the construction hard cost that came in and the bids, the lowest bid was 12.6. And we have available to the city 9.2. So but addition to the hard costs, BOE's contingency cost is 15%. So we need 1.8 to pay BOE to manage the project, our construction manage outside consultant.
So it's the $3.4 million gap plus the 1.2, so
of contingency.
$4.6 million gap.
Yes. So the total construction contract is 14.4. So if you just look at 14.4 is what it's going to, the hard bids plus the soft costs. And if we have 9.2 available, the construction gap is 5.2. But I think the council member was accounting also, you have to include the maintenance costs and you have to include, I think he said there was a 1.9.
Management inspection. So Shirley has those figures. I based them off of the Bureau of Engineering's figures. You mentioned the shortfall contingency, management inspection, maintenance, and other costs, and then $900,000 maintenance of the cables. So it's right there, and that's 3.2, 1.8, 1.9, and 900K.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's getting the construction hard costs and the soft costs. I think that's what's confusing. But there's 9.2 available to the city that includes the Caltrans grant and the Mort LaCretz funding at this point.
Right. So then you're saying the gap is 4.4?
No, the construction gap is 5.2, but you have to add up what the council member, council chair included is the additional 1.8 for contingency and the additional for construction management, which is
it totals 7.8.
1.9, and then a 900,000 for maintenance. So that includes all those numbers.
So we're all on the same page. So we're all saying the gap is 7.8. Is that right?
7.8, that includes maintenance. I wasn't looking at, we're looking at awarding, at this point we're looking at awarding a contract. To award a contract, the construction gap is 5.2.
Yeah. Okay.
From my perspective.
So 5.2 is the construction gap.
But you need to include,
7.8 is the
overall.
With maintenance.
With maintenance and construction management and the soft costs.
Versus the other, the low budget bridge, which is 3.6,
But there's no bids. That's an estimate. We're going on. The softer design has not been designed. It hasn't been awarded. It's estimates. This is what the urgency of this is. We have actual. Unfortunately, they're higher than what anyone wanted, but they're actual real bids from contractors that are approved. That we have approved permits. We have live bids that if we award them. Within the period that BOE can award them, we can have a contractor in place and have a project done in 18 months. when we're talking about simpler bridge, we still have to, it's just estimated cost for, that they went out to vendors, but it's not real numbers at this point. We still have to award, do a task order solicitation, get those numbers, identify additional funding.
And just to sort of complete understand, the original bid from River LA, the 9.2, is that?
That was an estimate, sir.
That was an estimate, so that's not a real bid?
No, that wasn't a real bid. That was an estimate of what they thought it would potentially cost, but that bid was for construction, not including the soft costs that it would take for the city to build. Because when they gave that number, it was assuming they would do it. But it didn't.
Wage and everything else.
Prevailing wages, our construction management, our procedures that we have to do when we build the city project have additional costs that weren't included in River LA's bid, estimate and not bid.
Also, River LA used city recommended vendors to obtain those construction costs. So it was third-party vendors that are on the city's go-to shortlist. So I imagine if the alternative design were put out to bid, you'd see the same sort of cost increases. And I understand the council's frustration with the cost increases. When we first went out to bid, we were at the nadir of the Great Recession. Nobody was building. There's a construction crane on every corner now, so I imagine we're not a unique sort of situation with our numbers coming back with a true market value that's 30 to 40% more expensive than what was anticipated. So while we appreciate and understand the virtue of looking at an alternative design, the city may find that they're at a $7 million shortfall regardless, because those maintenance and soft costs don't go away. And if the Caltrans money were to go away, you're at a $7 million shortfall. And we do have 9.2 today.
So, yeah, so from the mayor's office, our request is just to ask you to consider moving forward with the current bids and figure out, we're looking at prospective other funding sources. We're looking not only at foundations, but personal donors, and with BOE and River LA to come back to you and with some funding alternatives in the early of next year to see if we can have some potential identified sources that are viable and feasible to award the bid moving forward, because it just would be a missed opportunity to lose $9 million of other people, as I call it, OPM, other people's money, not using city dollars to build this bridge.
And you said the LaCresse folks would not accept anything other than the way that it's currently designed?
Yeah, for a couple reasons, and I asked them because...
Is there a hybrid? Is that a hard and fast? I mean, if it has to be redesigned for less money or...
Part of the challenge, I did ask that on behalf of the council member because I knew that was one of his interests, and what they're not just concerned with the design. I mean, they want this design. They're concerned about timing. He's 90 years old. He's going to be 91 in January. So they're concerned about timing. Even moving forward, 18 months is a long time for a 90-year-old man. So part of the frustration is, in his mind, it's been 5 years. I reminded him that this has been in the books for 18 years for the city. So that's all. It's not just that redesign. The redesign would increase the time from 18 months potentially to 3 years by the time it gets, because you have to get this, once you redesign it, you still have to get it permitted and go out to bid, and BOE can't bid it out. It takes at least 6 months to bid it out. So it is potentially going to increase the time. I tried to make that case to them, if we could do alternative route and if we can use some of their funds for the redesign, and they just weren't open to it for the timing. That was ultimately, they are wedded to this design. They participated in the design, in these 5 years with River LA and the community. So they're kind of anxious at this point, and so even just telling them to hold on, to give us some time to figure out a plan so that we don't lose out on their donation. And they respectfully have said yes. But I did make that plead for you, council member, if see we could use it for alternative redesign, and they were not at all open to it.
One could also argue that building a less elaborate bridge would take less time.
And
Right, depending on, if it is a prefabricated bridge, that's potentially true, because they usually fabricate certain sections at their plants, and then they ship it over. So probably the installation.
the permitting.
So it's just the length of time in redesign to advertising it and then to award the contract. We'll basically have to start that process again.
Yeah, so I think it is correct. It might be, instead of 5 years that this project took, once we got the funding secured, this might take 3, but it's still more time than it would take to get a project on the ground.
So the question that we have to ask ourselves, excuse me, Barbara, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, this is a bit of a gun is to our head sort of thing, and the donor is going to pull the cash if we don't approve exactly what he wants. I respect the Lacretz family so deeply. I admire them. They're wonderful. They've contributed to Los Angeles in ways that are exceptional, and I respect that so much. But let's just go back to, even if the shortfall is roughly equal, whether it's a downscaled modified bridge or the suspension bridge, say the shortage is somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 7.8 million, regardless of what we do, the question is, wouldn't it be better to proceed forward with a bridge that is more cost-effective and one that is accepted and embraced by the community, rather than one that might be a little over the top for its location in the first place? And I ask that openly. And I think that I think those are points to ponder. There's nothing worse than throwing good money after bad for a project that may not be embraced or may not be appropriate for a particular site. And so those are the questions that I feel like should be out there for the public domain, and that people should have those questions heard. And I come from that perspective as well. I have real concerns about the suspension, real concerns. And so moving forward with a bridge that might be inappropriate for the desired effect, to move horses and equestrian enthusiasts across the bridge safely, that's a real question that was brought over and over again to me by the equestrian community. And no one in Atwater Village is saying, Mitch, you got to get behind this 220-foot tall suspension bridge for Atwater Village because we want it so badly. There's no community, there is no base of support for that design, quite frankly. There just isn't, except from the Lacretz family. And that's just fact. So I think that we have to talk about that. Mr. Price, anything to add or comment?
No, I certainly respect the judgment
Mr.
of those who represent that area and who have been certainly getting the pulse of what the community's concerns are. So I respect that.
Yeah. And I too share a lot of the chairman's concerns, and I really don't like the position that we're in today. Because, I want us to be fiscally responsible and time prudent as well. But I can't get the right answer here, because when the chairman speaks about the time and doing a simpler bridge, it could be done faster, you guys kind of agree. But on the flip side, you also said that if we do another RFP, that might delay the time. So, if it's a zero-sum game, and also, I don't want to throw good money after bad, keeping going on to this project. But at the same time, initially you would think the cheapest option is the best option. But in this case, it looks like there's so many different variables at play here. And so I'm just really not happy about the situation we're in. And actually, we really have no options. It seems like
I think we have an option. So if we're talking about a 6-month delay because we get bids in for a modified design, if this has been going on since the late 90s anyway, and then since 2011 when the gift was offered, that's 5 years ago, I would argue in the overall scheme of things, if we're about to drop millions and millions of dollars for a bridge, what's another 6 months?
But they can't give us the 6, and if that's the case, if that's what the answer is, then I don't mind the 6 months, but it looks like you can't give a definitive answer. Is it going to take 6 months, another year? and, we risk losing all funding, not just the LaCretz funding. So, I mean, I almost feel like we're at a rock and a hard place. We have no choice but to go forward, which I'm not happy with, but,
Yeah, I'm going to make
I don't know.
a couple of things. We have Sharon So here, and so I think she came up here for a reason. Maybe she can have a comment on this. And then I'm going to make some recommendations. I don't feel we have to go forward with anything. These are public dollars, whether they come from the state or they come from locally. All California taxpayers come up with the public dollars that we spend locally or across the state. I am not a fan of moving forward with a project that, as I mentioned before, the community has concerns over anyway because it's not the design by many who've expressed to me that is particularly appropriate for equestrian crossings anyway. And so if you talk about throwing good money after bad, I think it's the worst appropriate time to give our blessing to a project that has so much uncertainty with it when I feel that there are other alternatives we could still pursue.
Okay.
So having said that.
Yeah, we have Sharon, so if we could just get our clear options.
So I don't know what your options are at the moment. I was downstairs listening to the conversation, and so I thought maybe we should, that I should come up and maybe suggest that there are a lot of moving parts to this. There are a lot of different funding sources. Some of them may have time frame limitations. This has been going on for a number of years with the donation, but there's also a concern from the community about whether this is the bridge that they want. And I guess I would actually start there to determine what it is that the community wants. From there, we appreciate, of course, any private sources of funding that can go into this, but I really think that we need to evaluate whether, even with the private funding, whether this is going to essentially cost more and providing a bridge that the community doesn't want. So if you wish, we can look at this, look at all of the sources of funding, bring a report back to you to provide your options as well as a time frame in terms of when this bridge versus an alternative bridge could be constructed.
I think you articulated exactly better what I was going to recommend in terms of next steps. Thank you so much, Sharon. So what I'd like to do is essentially, we know that there's a gap. There's a gap in the funding for a bridge designed as is, which is significant. We know that there's a gap in funding for a modified design that is significantly less than that, contingent upon keeping the ATP funding from the state. So we know there's a time factor involved with that money staying intact or not, and that's 3.6. If that goes away, then the gap in funding are in the similar neighborhoods. So that is what's before us. So what I'd like to do is this. Receive and file the BO report, but request a report back with potential funding sources that will not have an impact on the general fund. That could be used for building a bridge in the community. And in the meantime, we'll continue to, hear from the constituents I represent, enthusiasts of Griffith Park, et cetera, because we need, one thing is really clear, we've got to listen to our communities. And I feel very, very strongly about this. I hear loud and clear from some of the leading voices and opinion leaders in that area that this is not the bridge that they were looking for. And that's a concern, especially when we're potentially going into a road of filling a gap of almost $8 million to build that particular bridge. So we have to take this very seriously. And if we do go in the direction of a modified design, we have to move very aggressively on that as well. So I'm going to recommend that you report back at the first meeting in January of this committee, the very first meeting in January, which is more or less, a month and a half, 45 days or so. And in the meantime, we'll continue to work with BOE and Ms. Romero and all parties on what's possible. And as I mentioned, with all due respect to any donor across the city that wants to make a contribution to improve the quality of life and help Angelinos, we want to send the message, yes, we accept your donations, your volunteerism, your great ideas, your great thoughts, but we have to somehow marry the two for an appropriate outcome. And that's the bottom line here, no matter which direction we go. So that's what I'd like to recommend without objection. All right. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thanks, Ms. Romero. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shirley. Thanks, Sharon. And with that, that was the last item on the agenda, and I thank all of you for your reporting. This meeting is adjourned.